Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Welcome to The Ray Taylor Show, where I bring you the reviews on the latest movies and TV shows, as well as classic and foreign films. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and on this podcast, I'll be talking about all things film and television. Whether you're looking for a new show to binge or want to know if that blockbuster is worth the trip to the theater, or just want to hear my thoughts on a classic or foreign film, I've got you covered. So join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for new episodes, and let's dive into the world of film and television together. In this episode, I am going to be talking about the animated comedy hit, the Bob's Burgers movie that came out last year, 2022, directed by Loren Bouchard and Bernard Derriman, also written by Loren Bouchard and Nora Smith, and story consultant by Tony Gennaro, I should say. This movie stars all of the same voice actors. I mean, the director and writers are the same as the TV show Bob's Burgers. And the stars, the voice actors, Jon Benjamin, John Roberts, Dan Mintz, Eugene Mirman, and Kristen Schaal, all back reprising, including their voices to this animated movie based on the animated TV show. The plot of this movie: the Belchers try to save their restaurant from closing as a sinkhole forms in front of it, as well as the kids going to solve a mystery that could save their family's restaurant. I am a huge fan of the show. I just finished watching every single episode of this show, all 13 seasons, which I believe we're currently in the 13th season. So however many episodes of that season have been out, but I've watched every episode available. A show that I've always heard good things about, had recommended to me many times, and finally decided to put it on. Instantly addicted to the show. I absolutely love the show, absolutely love the characters. I love so much about this show, and as I was watching the show, watching all the episodes, it became one of my new favorite background shows where, I put it on as I'm doing work, and it's a show like all of my background shows, which I don't necessarily have to pay attention to every episode, but I can always look up and be engaged and enjoy it. It's also a short episode, so, if I miss a little bit here or there, it's not a big deal. But I love watching the show and was excited to watch this movie after watching the entire series, which apparently this movie takes place between season 12 and season 13 of the show. I found that out prepping for this review. I don't think it makes that big of a difference, but, I love the show. I love this movie. I was expecting to love this movie, right? Going in, I pretty much knew what to expect. It is a show that is consistently good. It is a show where I love all of the characters. There's no aspect of the show that I have a problem with. So going into this movie, I was highly expecting to enjoy it. And I did. It was everything that makes the show great and more. Right, it is definitely a must-watch for any fan of the show, which should go without saying. I would imagine if you're a fan of the show, you have already watched this movie. But if for some reason you've been avoiding it, do not. And if you haven't watched the show, I would imagine you would enjoy it. It is still a fun, funny, animated family film. So even if you're not familiar with the show, you could still watch this and still enjoy it. I would say it definitely rewards you a little bit. There are definitely bits and pieces. Obviously, a lot of characters, a lot of cameos from a lot of fun characters show up. So it does reward you if you have or are familiar with the show itself, but not necessarily. So it's a good movie, top to bottom, good movie. And what I enjoyed is that this movie added to the Bob's Burgers universe in some ways. It answered some questions. It showed us things that we maybe have had questions about and just didn't really know the origins of or seen the origins of. And also, it's the animation of this, because it is a movie, it's elevated. There are a lot more scenes in this movie, some 3D renderings going on, showing, the camera movements. There's a lot more, a little bit more in depth, a little bit more detail than we would necessarily see in the show itself. So the level of animation, whether it's the 3D kind of shot of showing you the Wonder Wharf and then panning to show kind of where Bob's Burgers is located in that situation, is very interesting. Obviously, also the story is elevated. They have almost 2 hours to give a story that's almost like 5 or 6 episodes, right? So they can do a lot more. And because they do a lot more, you also get to see a lot of cameos by many of the characters throughout the many seasons of Bob's Burgers, which is fun too. It's fun to see all of those characters kind of show up, right? The things I love that are in this movie from the show that show up, right? I love the Bob's Burgers episodes of the show that play like a musical. They're like basically musical episodes. So obviously parts of this movie are musicals, which is also a staple for animated movies in general. Animated movies are well known, especially from the variety of Disney movies that came out or come out regularly, have musical moments to them. And the Bob's Burgers show, I love. Like, there's different kinds of Bob's Burgers shows, right? Some shows, it's the kids telling these stories that are usually based on movies. There's other episodes that are kind of like everybody's just bursting out into song, which I appreciate as well. All of those elements, I would say, or many of those elements that are part of the show come into play in this movie as well. The intro to the show, we also see the intro to the TV show, the montage that plays during the opening credits of Bob's Burgers. We see how many times the restaurant itself has had to reopen, right? And we kind of get a bit of that. We get a part of that where in this movie we see a reopening of one of those events, one of the many events that this family had to overcome over the years in order to keep the doors open, right? Many things in this movie are threatening the business, right? There is a piling on of hurdles that come to fruition throughout the runtime of this movie, right? And of course it has the kids going on their own adventure, right? And it adds new information about the origins of the restaurant itself, as well as Louise's rabbit ears. And maybe I'm Louise? Kristen Schall's character. Like, we get some information about the rabbit ears, which I found to be, like, kind of blew me away. I was like, somebody's actually referencing that she's wearing these things, and we kind of get the origin story of that as well, right? So it also adds to the overall show in those moments and answers some questions that maybe fans of the show may have had, which I appreciate that as well, right? Because it's always kind of a concern going into a movie that comes from a TV show that it may just feel like a long episode, which isn't bad. Like, even a long 2-hour long episode of Bob's Burgers would still be a great episode of TV. But there are definitely movies based on TV shows where it kind of is underwhelming, let's say. And I would say because this movie adds things that make the overall story of this family, how they started, what the origins of are for a specific kind of thing that is part of the show, big part of the show, I think it adds a lot of things, right? It's the very creative ways to try and stay. It also shows this movie shows a lot of the different creative ways that this family does things they do to try and stay in business, right? Trying to overcome the hurdles that exist that are threatening this business from staying open, right? And this movie also has some seriously suspenseful scenes, some fun action moments, and some suspenseful moments that, are like, how are they going to get out of this, right? Which I love that as well. So this movie is a fun ride, hits on all the cylinders, does some things that make the show even better. They answer some questions. They show us some more of the history of this family. All of those things. I love this movie. I do want to talk about spoilers, so I will be getting into spoilers of this movie, talking about specific things. I would imagine the majority of people that are watching this have seen the movie. I would imagine. Or if you haven't, go watch the movie. Like, if you've seen the show, you're going to love this movie. And if you haven't seen the show, you're going to watch the show after watching this movie. Because it's great. Because all the characters are great, and the family is great, right? It's one of the only things that I can think of where there's a family-run business, and part of the show is this family running the business. Bob's love of food. Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about, are you a fan of art, movies, and all things entertainment? Then you need to check out youtube.com/inspired disorder. Our page is jam-packed with all kinds of great content, including making of videos of the many faces, an ongoing art series of abstract ink paintings. But that's not all. We also feature daily episodes from The Ray Taylor Show, a podcast that brings you movie reviews, TV show reviews, episode recaps, opinions on news and entertainment, and much more. There's also a weekly diary and top 5 movie rankings of a variety of categories. And if that wasn't enough, we've also got how-to videos covering all kinds of topics. So why wait? Head on over to youtube.com/inspired disorder and start exploring the amazing content we have to offer. And now back to the show. Like, this movie could have almost been, I would have been perfectly okay if this movie was like a Thanksgiving movie, because the Thanksgiving episodes in Bob's Burgers are special episodes, because Thanksgiving is a holiday that Bob specifically loves because he is a chef. He is somebody who loves food, who loves making food, and every Thanksgiving episode brings you something interesting. And if this movie had been that, which it's not, would have loved it, would have absolutely loved it. Either way, I'm going to get into spoilers, so you have been warned. Right? So you have the many things in this movie, like one after the other, many, many things that are threatening this business in this movie, that just keep piling up. Starting off with this loan payment that's due, right? That's past due, right? Which this loan that they took out to buy kitchen equipment, right? So you have that. This movie starts with Bob they have a meeting with the guy from the bank, and he's trying to make a special burger. He's practicing making burgers for this to give to this guy in order to sweeten him up, to hopefully give them an extension on this loan. That's where this movie starts, right? Then you have, out of nowhere, a giant sinkhole that opens up right in front of their business. Right? 7 days before this loan payment is due, right? Not even to pay off the loan, just to make a payment, right? Which, of course, his wife, Linda, very supportive, right? Always kind of his cheerleader. We can do this. As he's like doubtful, she's kind of the opposite side of that, to keep motivating him. We can do this. We have 7 days. There's the event going on at Wonder Wharf, right? There's always like something going on in this town that gives them a potential opportunity. But almost every time in this show, when there is a special event going on, that is when something drastic happens, and they're unable, their plans of success fall on the wayside, as it were, right? So the sinkhole opens up that just completely, and then they don't get business for multiple days, right? And then a body is discovered, right? Louise discovers a body. Part of this, one of the storylines is Louise being called a baby, And part of that is her journey to prove that she's brave. And one of those moments, she goes into the sinkhole to prove she's brave and uncovers a body. So now this giant sinkhole not only is not going to get filled in, but is now a crime scene. So it's got to be investigated as well. Right? So it's just piling up. First, no loan extension, then sinkhole, then crime scene. It's just one thing after the other, right? But then this movie starts with what that body is. We see what that body is as this movie starts. 6 years ago, there was a murder at Wonder Wharf, which is the amusement park that's kind of the big attraction. The guy who owns that owns their building, owns a bunch of buildings. They pay him Mr. Fischoeder. So not only is that murder now uncovered right in front of their shop, right? One thing after the other, but also as one of their plans to hopefully help them out financially is to ask Mr. Fischoeder to let them miss a month rent. But he becomes the suspect in this murder, right? So just even more, just one thing after the other is piling up against Bob, and he's shows it very much so. And like I said, the other storyline that this movie talks about is Louise, right? Her being called a baby, bringing her bravery into question, which if you've seen the show, one, she's one of the best. I mean, all the characters are great, but she is one of the most bombastic and brash characters. Like, she, out of everybody, is the most fearless. So the fact that her bravery would be called into question in this film is absurd, but handled in a perfect way where she believes it, right? Right. And it's the first time that I can think of where the rabbit ears that she wears in every episode, she always has it on. In my recollection of watching the show, I believe has never been referenced in the show. Like, nobody points out that she wears these rabbit ears. But not only are the rabbit ears brought to the attention of people in this movie, but also we get to see the origin story, or at least first we get what her version of the origin story is, and then we get the actual origin story of it being like she thinks it was given to her in preschool because she was scared, and that made her brave, right? So her thought of these ears is that it was the thing that made her brave, right? That she was a scaredy cat going to preschool, right? And that kind of eats at her, thinking that these people who are calling her a baby and that she's not brave, that kind of makes her think that it's true, right? And a lot of this movie, it's her trying to prove that she's brave, which is pretty crazy, right? Oh, great. And then part of how that body gets uncovered is when she goes into the sinkhole, right? Trying to prove she's brave. Well, she kind of has second thoughts, falls into it, and then accidentally uncovers the body. And then the body's teeth fall out of the skull of the skeleton into her mouth. Absolutely disgusting, right? Absolutely disgusting. In this movie, we have Gene. I love Gene. And in the beginning, he's creating an instrument out of a napkin dispenser. And he wants to reunite with the Itty Bitty Ditty Committee to his band that he formed many seasons ago. And he has this dream of them performing at the Wonder Wharf event that's supposed to be happening. You have Tina in this movie kind of struggle to ask Jimmy Jr. to be her summer vacation boyfriend, right? And we have Tina, as she's struggling, her having dreams where we get some of the cameos of characters that she manifests, like Jericho the horse and the sexy zombies that are riding, along with Jimmy Jr. riding on a horse, right? So we get little cameos here and there from different aspects of these characters. We also get a peek, as I said, into the time before they got the restaurant, where Bob and Linda were younger and sitting on the hood of his car and him talking to her about all the ideas he has for this restaurant that he wants to start, right? The first time that I can think of that we ever saw that kind of origin before they got the restaurant. We have Teddy in this movie, right? Teddy, the great guy that he is, also very insecure guy that he is, but always there to help, also with the maintenance and handyman stuff, but also when the restaurant gets shut down, basically, in many ways, they try and put up signs to encourage people to go around through the alley to come inside. Of course, nobody does that. He builds, which is a brilliant idea, builds a food cart for them to go sell hamburgers outside of the Wonder Wharf and then later go inside. So we get a little bit of Teddy in this episode trying to help the situation, trying to be a good friend, right? You have many cameos from fun characters. Sergeant Bosco, obviously big part. Of course, there's a crime going on. He wants to be the one to solve the crime. You see him on a stakeout at the club where the One-Eyed Snakes biker gang hangs out, right? So you get a little cameo of the biker gang that showed up in multiple episodes. You have just a small moment where the health inspectors show up, right? You have Bob and Tina, and not Bob and Linda and Teddy outside of Wonder Wharf, and they see, with their cart, and they see the health inspectors show up, and they don't have a license to be selling burgers in that way, so they freak out and go inside. But we get a little snippet with the health inspectors, and of course, we get a little snippet of the raccoon in the alley, right? All these little characters that, if you've seen the show, then not that they're like very impactful moments in this movie, but it's cool to see the many characters that are involved in this show having a little moment in this movie, which not all of them are. There's a lot that aren't, but every time I was like, oh, the raccoon. I was probably way too happy to see the raccoon in the alley, but I did. I was like, oh, there he is. Let's take a quick break from this episode because I want to talk about, are you looking to add some unique and expressive artwork to your home, office, or wardrobe? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor. That's me. These abstract paintings on paper explore the endless possibilities of the human face, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Now you can bring these stunning and thought-provoking pieces into your own space with high-quality prints and t-shirts, featuring designs from the Many Faces series. Or take home a one-of-a-kind original piece for your collection. Don't miss out on this opportunity to add some original and expressive artwork to your home, office, or wardrobe. Head on over to InspiredDisorder.com to browse and purchase original artworks, prints, and t-shirts from the Many Faces series today. And now, back to the show. Obviously, a lot of fun musical moments, as they are in the show. They are in this, whether it's the kids going off to school or the carnies, which a lot of new characters when the kids go to that carnie village where they're playing like carnie games to like remember the carnie that died, that was recovered, the body. So a lot of fun musical moments. Definitely a lot of great action and suspense, whether it's the intense murder mystery that's taking place, where they're all captured by the villain who kind of the mastermind behind all of this stuff. And there's the massive exposition dump that happens, right? Or the crazy car chase that happens shortly after that, where the family is trying to get away in this like little toy car kind of a thing, like a car that was probably used for a ride, like a go-kart or a bumper cart or something like that, them trying to get away and being chased by that guy, and them being them crashing into the sinkhole and then getting buried alive in the sinkhole, all trapped in this tiny car. Definitely kind of terrifying. Like, that was part of the movie where I'm like, holy shit, how are they going to get out of this, right? To see this family like just trapped. This family you love trapped in this car at the bottom of the sinkhole. And of course, the movie has an extremely satisfying ending, I would say, right? You had Bob persevere, right? They're trapped in the car. Linda gives up, which she never does. That's what Bob does, and she's the one to encourage him. And he points that out. He's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to encourage myself. He becomes his own cheerleader, right? He pushes through. He becomes the cheerleader and believes that he can get out. And, whether that plan or what is, to cause friction to re-rupture the water main, still fun. Still a great moment where Bob is the one to kind of be his own, have to rise to the occasion on his own and can't rely on his wife. You have the itty bitty ditty committee playing at the wharf, right? Fulfilling the dream that Eugene had. You have the fact that they were able to pay their loan, or at least make the loan payment. You have Tina getting the moment where she is able to ask Jimmy Jr. To be her summer boyfriend, right? You have Louise not flipping out when her ears fall off at school. And I don't believe we ever actually see her with them off, right? The angles at which we are shown in that moment, we never actually see what her head looks like, which is still great because it still has that, it still provides a bit of mystery, right? First, it was the mystery of where did those ears come from? Why does she wear them? And why are nobody mentioning it? Now they mention it. Now we see where they came from. And we find out that it wasn't bravery, that it was actually something for Bob to remember his mom. Like there's such a deeper sentimental value to those ears, and that she was actually brave going into school. It had nothing, they weren't connected things, but they just coincidentally happened at the same time, right? But you see her kind of getting over this thing where, she's no longer, the ears are no longer this crutch that she never really needed, right? But we still have that element of mystery as far as what the top of her head looks like. And we also get another reopening. We get the grand reopening as the hole is filled up, right? So as we see in the beginning of every episode of Bob's Burgers, we've never actually experienced any of those reopenings until this movie, which is kind of fun. And there were some missing characters, which I don't remember seeing. Jimmy Pesto, the guy who owns the restaurant across the street, that there's always a competition with him and Bob. Gail, Linda's sister, the artist, the neurotic artist. A lot of the Wagstaff school isn't really part of this much. Dr. Yap, the dentist. I don't believe I remember seeing Mort, the mortician, the business next door. And there's maybe they probably showed up or popped in and I just missed it. But, they weren't, not all of they didn't pack everything into this one. But I loved, the story was great, right? It did extra things. It elevated things. It made it feel more like a movie, right? And the story was bigger, right? It's bigger than what you would get in the normal 20-minute episode, right? Because the common worry, as I said before, with movies based on TV shows is that it just feels like another episode, and I didn't feel like that at all. I felt like this is a bigger story that's being told in that universe, right? With the added animation style, right? The blending of the musical moments with just a great murder mystery, the addition of the flashbacks to Bob and Linda before they opened the restaurant, and the whole storyline with Louise and her ears, the origin story of that being added just makes the overall story of the show even better, right? And all the characters have fun arcs, some more than others, obviously. But, whether it's, I think Louise probably has the biggest one. Bob becomes his own motivation, right? There's a lot of characters have these moments. Tina gets the courage to ask her out. Gene gets his moment to perform at the wharf with his band, get his band back together, right? It just made me love the show more. It made me love the characters even more, which I already loved all the characters, right? I'm glad that the show is still going, right? Absolutely love the movie. Absolutely love the show. And, I'm good with it just continuing to go. With shows like this, you can just keep it going. Just keep it. It's like and they're like different characters that you just don't see a lot of in shows. So, and, they're all different from each other, but also different from other shows that you would normally, like, you don't see these characters necessarily represented in a lot of different shows, which is all of the many reasons I love Bob's Burgers, the show, and the movie. But I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of The Ray Taylor Show. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on the Bob's Burgers movie. And don't forget to tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for new interviews for new movie reviews on TV shows and movies. And join the conversation on your favorite podcast platform by leaving a comment or rating, or on YouTube if you're watching this. And until next time, enjoy the show.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at InspiredDisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at InspiredDisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.